Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's Tyler Bryden here, and I'm joined by a person I've known for a few years now, Quinn Lawson. We've bumped into each other, different cities, different places, different times, all on different stages of our entrepreneurial journey. And I really appreciate you reaching out to book some time and do this here today. I think you've got a lot of great insights to share, whether it's about some of the content work that you're doing about entrepreneurship in general. And I should stop talking right now. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, maybe share a bit of context around your backstory and how you arrived where you are today. And what are you doing today? That would be great to know right off the top.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tyler. We definitely met. It would have been at Indie Hackers. I'm here in Toronto. You
Yes,
might be
yes.
able to hear the ambulance and the common,
Classic sign of
the
Toronto, yeah.
nature. Yeah, the nature in the background. But I think, are you from London originally
Originally,
too?
just outside. I considered
Yeah.
London a big town at one point in my life and then moved to London. Yeah,
Same. Yeah. Farm outside of London, then
exactly.
downtown. That's where I got my start for sure. I love it. But yeah, I have a content marketing business. It's called Community and Company. I've always wanted to help entrepreneurs. And with this business, basically what I do is I help subject matter experts. That's a bit of a catch all for entrepreneurs, deep domain experts, researchers, professionals. And I help turn them into content creators and community builders. It's something that I think a lot of people are taking for granted right now, but I started a few years ago basically just saying you have a lot of great ideas, you don't have enough time to create content. Everyone's familiar with the idea of ghostwriting, but all these tools
Yeah,
came
yeah.
online with recording sessions. The insight I had was that you could record content by interviewing people, and then you could ghostwrite that content for them in their voice, make it very easy. And the premise is that you don't need to workshop your marketing strategy. A lot of people just need to be
Mm,
louder, need
yeah.
to hit publish, and that's what we do.
And you've been through multiple endeavors in sort of content production for a long time
I've
before
always been
even
in
sort of
sales.
formally. Yeah, sales. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, this point that you bring. It's people are not even, it's not good enough to just be this deep domain expert. In some cases, you can get through it if you're an incredible PhD and or a doctor or something like that. But now there seems like there's necessity to be active online, be vocal, publish content. And whether it's healthy or not, this idea that if you're not somewhat vocal, that you're almost in a way non-existent in some cases, especially from like a larger discoverability. Or for a lot of people, I think creating content is the opportunity for them to break through the noise or barriers or challenges of life. For myself, sometimes when I'm like trying to think, how can I get to the next level of my career? A lot of it comes around creating content. It's part of the reason why I'm here today. And I'm sure part of the reason why you're here as well. So I'm interested, you touched on this point. I think we had discussions about this at one point, which was this idea of capturing the natural voice of someone and then turning that into content. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the process. Is that still what you're doing? Are you capturing asynchronously? Are you doing the one-on-one interviews and capturing the voice there? I would love to hear a bit about that process.
Yeah, I built this business because it was my curiosity engine. I've worked in a ton of different. I became a marketer late, like when I started this business, because I've always worked in and around startups. I've always wanted to launch my own startup. And I realized that a lot of these folks who are building impactful businesses, they don't even necessarily have to be venture backed startups, just
Yeah, yeah.
people who have a business. They should be sharing, they should be saying out loud what they generally say in private. And the way that we do that is really simple. I call it it's the cottage drive approach, where the founder can call me when he's in between things, or the business owner can call me when he's in between things, maybe on the drive to the cottage on the weekend,
Mm,
and I will record the phone call and then chop up the different ideas into bits or into posts that can then become social media posts. And I think also this kind of, maybe we should be dispelling some ideas over the course of this podcast. Creating content is nebulous,
mm.
and a lot of people be like, I don't want to be a think boy or whatever on LinkedIn
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or on YouTube. But I think it involves having a bit of a reframe. It's about, what are you trying to build and help your customers with? And you should be doing everything you possibly can to get in front of them to help them.
Mm,
And that kind of avoids, every time you write content, that avoids from putting stuff out for your own benefit, which
Yeah.
we see those cringy posts sometimes for sure.
And so you're primarily focused, and maybe I'm wrong, but on the actual written final output. Are you producing any of this into audio, video clips? What's the main sort of output? Is it blog posts? Is it LinkedIn posts? And is it all text with images attached? And are you producing the images? Is it multimodal audio and video? Just wondering where you're seeing the, and maybe not the most ROI, but most focus for the content output from your perspective.
So we typically start with organic social. I specifically work with B2B folks really well, and some of it turns into audiograms. And it's really about the way that I try to frame the business. And I think a lot of people should think about content, especially the ones I'm talking to, the ones who have always wanted to put stuff out there. You have to think about what is holding you back. And there's about five things. There's the thing that I want to put out is written and I'm not a great writer. There's, I have a bunch of stuff in a drive folder or in a folder and I'm afraid to hit publish. There's, I'm not ready yet because my product or the thing I'm selling is not ready yet. And my job is to fill in the negative space to make it happen. And that quite often can be around cheerleading and being like, this is good enough, let's ship something, to let's get a editor here for you so that your vision can become a bit of a reality, or let's work through your ideas because they're not quite formulated and let's find a way to engage with your audience or find an audience and test these things out.
So you're doing a lot of coaching as well as cheerleading too, because when you're sharing personally, even that, I just find also, I guess there's this myth, and it is a myth but people think there's so much noise and content out there that it's sometimes maybe not worthwhile, or that's not the greatest return of their time. So I guess your sort of, at least the goal there is to put them in a natural state, like you said, to drive up and make that not this big cognitive, scary task. You're just taking a much more natural output from them and then turning it into actual good content. But
we don't have to engineer. You don't have to over engineer it. Ship stuff, get it out the door, and you can make mistakes. Like, trust is so critically important this day and age, and there's so much noise that it's actually, barring being in a regulated industry like finance or something and making a mistake there, you can put stuff out there and people will generally, the benefits outweigh the costs essentially.
In the world, I'm interested in a couple of things. I guess when you were going back a little bit, when you were a salesperson, were you creating content at that time, or was that much more picking up the phone, calling people, LinkedIn messaging? How has it changed? Like when you first started as a salesperson, were you creating content like we see some salespeople doing today?
Definitely. I was early to using some video, like Loom videos for connecting with people. I would always use marketing, reshares, and co-authoring posts on industry with clients in order to develop trust with them. But I fit myself into sales because I've always been a community builder first. I've always been a pro. I used to organize startup drinks in London that led me to organizing events in Toronto with startup speakers. This was like 10, 12 years ago when we didn't even, when baby boomers had never even heard the word entrepreneur or whatever. And then being in and around startups, I was like, you know what, I'm a salesperson. And then I realized I'm actually a marketer here.
And what is that? This marketing versus sales dichotomy is such an interesting thing. And I'm playing multiple roles. One thing I sometimes find is that sometimes sales is hard and it's demotivating and it's challenging. And so then it almost feels a little bit easier to say, you know what, I'm going to go into marketing because I don't have to deal with as much rejection. And there's a little bit of a wish-wash of your effectiveness unless the company is data-focused attribution, where your efforts aren't maybe quantified as much as a sales rep. Like I've got 2 sales reps that we've hired recently. And at the end of the day, I'm like looking how many, besides like high level touch points, demos and things booked, I'm like, how much revenue did you generate this month? Where again, if you're maybe doing paper performance advertising, Google Ads, it's easy to measure everything if you set up, but there's a lot of organic content production and a lot of stuff that you can't necessarily measure the impact. And so there's some solace as like a marketer to hide in that and be, I don't know why I'm attacking marketers right now. I am a marketer.
Bring it. Yeah, bring it, man.
Bring that heart. But it just, I find it a really fascinating thing. And I'm just bumping up in front of it because when you're putting numbers on the board, there's nowhere to run if those numbers don't look good, or at least you have to have some sort of self-reflection. So just wondering about that moment, or what were the trigger moments that led you more on the marketing side versus the sales side? Again, no personal attack there, just interest about that switching moment or that realization.
Pretty simple for me. I definitely have more to unpack about sales versus marketing and the carrots and sticks of it. But for me, I didn't like working with packaged products. That's the simple thing. I didn't like, and I originally started my agency, like this business, is because I was a business sided founder in an AI startup with that AI testing tool. And I realized part of my challenge and the reason why the startup failed is because we didn't market it effectively, and I didn't know enough about technical digital marketing. And I was more of a salesperson trying to get early sales traction for the business. And then I just realized, because we were selling to developers, to these really early stage product focused developers, that they should be talking way more about what the problem they're solving before they even have a product in market, which might be my first major point, which is the sort of the dichotomy between marketing and sales. Marketing can be a discovery function of product in its early days, and sales comes in when you have something to convert.
At least you hope so.
On the client side. Yeah. You hope you do.
It's interesting. I also bring up this point about, for good or bad, I've always been a big believer in put something out there, even if it's not ready fully. I've done that with multiple products throughout my career, websites, all this different stuff, even content too. And one of the trends I've seen is this idea of building in public. And that can start as soon as you even conceptualize the company or the work that you're doing. And I think there's a lot of trust and empathy and just respect that's built if you are openly sharing the journey, even in those early stages where you're unsure if it's going to work out. And there's one story that's sticking out to me right now. I believe his name is David Park on Twitter. I'll link him in this, but he built a little platform called Jenny AI, which was for students writing research papers. And he was documenting that whole journey. And then all of a sudden just hit insane growth. And so like he went from like barely anything for multiple years to like 270 in MRR, 270K. And just the fact that he had been documenting it for so long, it's just such a wild journey. I love following this. I love seeing all the build in public. And some of the things that he's sharing are just lessons learned from this growth period, or lessons learned from the churn during this growth period. And so I think there are a lot of things that sometimes are core insights that you can share that are valuable. I guess in that regards, there's two things that I'm interested to hear your perspective on though. Are the build in public people, are they just sharing for other people who are entrepreneurs who are interested in build in public? Or do you think that actually works with potential customers? Do you think that's a valuable proposition for customers?
Though those two for sure. I think that they're doing it for people to follow along. The whole point is to build trust, build affinity, a likability towards the person doing the building or the problem set. The first group that you're talking about is people who just want to build in public and learn how to do that from a marketing standpoint. And then hopefully that they might be converted customers. The other is prospective customers. This is a big, giant, hairy problem I'm trying to solve. And when it fails and you can't log in and something breaks, hopefully you'll appreciate how far I've come and will not churn forever after it fails the first time, because you're that excited about solving the problem. And then the third thing too, which I always tell people, is you never know who people know. And so you should be tapping into your friends, your colleagues, your old schoolmates, your everybody. The name of my company is called Community and Company Inc. And the purpose and the reason why I came up with that idea is because of the idea of seas. Is like, think of it like a crescent moon within a sea. And so your content and your community, when you're doing anything, you need to think about who's in your closest circle and then who's in your outer circle, and have this sort of enlightened self-interest that the thing that you're building is helping other people, is helping your community. And so tap into those audiences, give the mic to other people like you, like what you're doing here right now, and find a way to like slowly grow. And one of the reasons I think why, going back to marketing versus sales, I think marketing sounds really good, but it's a junior at the big kids table of company functioning, because marketing projects are more elaborate than sales, and not only sales, fulfilling existing customers and then product. And so
Yeah.
if you think of holiday, and so in your mind, the reason why marketing takes a back seat is because for someone who has multiple hats like yourself, hitting the phone a few more times is much easier when you find time, rather than elaborately planning a multi-stage marketing campaign.
Yeah. And I've never been a very strategic marketing plan person. It's more been like a spray and pray and seeing it works and correct and redact back. If not, one of the examples that has, I got so many questions for you based on that. Also, first of all, I love the term enlightened self-interest. What a wonderful phrase that is. But I guess I'll actually take a step back. I'm interested in maybe a little bit more this idea of the tool set that you're using and the contrast from what you were previously doing for whether it was for your company right now or any sort of marketing role that you had done. And then, so what was the previous state of tools that you were using? And then maybe give us a little bit of update on what you're using now to enable this process.
Oh, I have a lot to talk about with this. I started like, at the end of the day, I want to build companies like that. I think entrepreneurship is critically important for the economy, and everything I've done with the hats I have are all around supporting entrepreneurship, my own companies, other people's companies, whatever it is. And so I became a marketer because I realized I didn't even know how Google Analytics really worked.
Yeah.
And I started the agency by calling people I knew who had small little websites and being like, pay me what you can. I'm going to set up Google Analytics.
Figure this out.
Let's tap, let's do some SEO here. That was about 3 years ago, until I found my service offering. And tools I used to use: HubSpot, Pipedrive, Apollo, any sort of like the email type checker tools, LinkedIn Sales Nav, obviously, pretty standard. I'm like on the geriatric side of millennial, unfortunately. Did not, yeah, what's that?
No, just good to be aware. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely regret not spending more time in Excel class in college. That's
I
for
agree.
sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And then now with marketing, I've learned the Google Suite, the Google Digital Marketing Suite, Microsoft Bing, like the Search Master, the Webmaster tools. I think that email newsletters tools, and even email, I think if we were going to talk about a tool, I think the most interesting shift in marketing is happening with email servers, email services right now. That your audience
would love, elaborate.
Yeah, so you might have heard a few years ago they were sunsetting the cookies, or somewhat the capabilities of cookies. And so there was a bit of a disruption around advertising dollars. It seems like that's not a problem now, but around attribution with programmatic advertising. For people who don't know, basically the cookies following you around on the internet allow for retargeting, which pads the pockets of the businesses paying Google, Facebook, and all the other ones for advertising dollars. And so there was a shift towards newsletter, I think, to inbox being the holy grail of attention. Like, people keep their inbox pretty clean.
Yeah.
They feel it invasive if they get something in their inbox that they don't know is supposed to be in there. And there's all these privacy laws around getting in and out of someone's inbox in some places. And so I actually think, because a lot of people are on Gmail and they're starting to do this, that, and also the other providers, even Outlook, that email health is going to be a giant issue starting in 2024 going forward. And it's in a way to protect their advertising dollars from the big tech players.
Okay, the connection between protecting the advertising dollars. You just think that that email could be such an effective channel that it could dilute that.
It currently is a very effective channel.
Yeah. And so Google is, or maybe, or the idea here is that maybe these companies are over indexing on penalizing email activity
They're
for,
going to go harder on it.
yeah.
They're
It's
going to start
interesting.
penalizing it.
It's interesting you say that, because we've started outbound process at Speak. And with that, so we're using Apollo right now. And I didn't know about so much stuff. Email warming. I didn't know what email warming was. So that's one thing, like setting up new domains to send from your email, so it's not your root domain. We had one of our reps, and he didn't even do anything very spam-like, but testing on our main domain. And I got a notification that he had enough people had reported him as spam that it had shut down the delivery of his account. And that happened so quick. That was like, hey, I'm starting outbound. And 4 hours later, it was gone. And basically G Suite had this message inside that said, this person has has 5 chances this year. So he has 4 chances left, where if that report ever happened again, it just keeps whittling down until I don't know what the actual final outcome is, but like canceling your email. And obviously there's some impact on the rest of your domain. So fascinating. I'll just touch on a couple other things that have been recent for me focused about this. So my partner, Monica, she's a Salesforce SFMSC architect. So sees a lot, like deliverability of millions of emails. So some insights that I've learned from her. But one of the other things was like one of the tools that I'm most fascinated with right now is Intercom basically powers our entire business, and they have a lot of leverage in the space right now. But if you're not a big company and you're sending emails from Intercom, you're on a shared server with a bunch of other companies, and that's where the distribution is coming. So I'm trying to figure out, if we get penalized, is that affecting other people on that shared server? Or if another company gets penalized, is it impacting that? I don't know. You don't have to give me the answer for it. It's an interesting phenomenon when you're not a big enough company to have those servers yourself.
Yeah. Also, even the sophistication to manage and maintain your domain health, right?
Yes.
Which is basically around having best practices and maintaining it every once in a while, like over time, regularly. And I'm having the same. Your chat intercom, just refresh me before jumping in. It's like CS, right? It's the little CS tool on the side of your website.
You come to the site, the little chat bars there, or the little chat on there. You open up the chat. Our team sits there all day waiting for chat to people, but then you can have guided experiences that people are going through. But then it's developed into email product tours. And then they just came out saying our core focus is AI here right now. So they've also got Finn, which is their AI chatbot, which is basically ingesting all your help documentation and any other part that you want to include in the knowledge base. And then that's using that sort of embedding large language models to help service people as well too. So there's been a huge jump up for them in performance. And so for the part that's intriguing to me is we do email deliverability, and there's this flow when someone signs up for Speak AI 14-day trial, and we're send those emails. But what I'm prioritizing or trying to think about is obviously a good product experience, but actually in-app chat experiences versus email, because email, I'm finding like a 25% open rate, maybe. And there's some questions around, is this open rate actually being tracked? Because apparently Apple is basically turning on any tracking when they open the email. Like that was a security sort of protocol by Apple, where it doesn't matter if you open the email, they're going to say it's open. All of a sudden your email stats might not actually be accurate. Whereas in a chat in the application, when someone's in our core product, it's 100% open rate almost, because it just sits right there. So it's interesting you talk about prioritizing newsletters. And I think there's a huge value proposition to that. For us, we're trying to prioritize like in-app interactions and very event-based, versus in a free trial or a 14-day trial, you can say, hey, day 1, here's the email we send. Day 3, here's the email we send. But I just find that the personalization is not strong enough to jump over that open rate hurdle. And so email, at least in our state, is not our most popular or valuable channel.
So with newsletters, it's a similar issue, because I'm trying to figure out whether I have a couple projects that I'm scoping right now around newsletters, and I don't know whether to suggest Substack or like an external newsletter network or community tool.
Interesting, yeah.
Or make it an internal one like a HubSpot or
ActiveCampaign
or something, or ActiveCampaign. And the answer used to be really simple, especially with the Medium days. A lot of people would start blogs and write on Medium, and there is some social network effects. But to me, you'd want the SEO juice to come back to your website. And so get it on your site, push people to your site. But I think websites are losing their value a little bit. Like general marketing websites are losing their value just a little bit. And the risk of your domain health might tip the balance towards using something like Substack
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah, it's intriguing. I think we are using Intercom for our email, but I don't think the system is fully optimized for that. And previously we'd use ActiveCampaign, but all these systems become so, in a way, cost prohibitive based on the number of contacts that you have on that list too. Like we churned off ActiveCampaign because it was just getting enormous. Intercom is still an enormous bill for us every month, but it's so embedded into they got us with the startup package, the year, do everything. And then at the end of the year, start to pull out, all the things, and you're stuck because you've built this system around it. And really, I can't complain. It's funny when you have conversations with them, they'll say, hey, we are the market leader, and that's why we get to charge market leading pricing. And you're like, what am I going to do? I'm just stuck. So it also shows like the power that is capable. You talked about the SEO value of website. Would be interested if you maybe elaborate on that idea of the value of website degrading. Would love to hear your thoughts on it.
I don't know. I do have one thing I want to pump your tires about before we relay to email. What do you use for your update? Your like speak business, these many users update?
Yeah, I use, why can't I remember the name? I think it's called, I should get this. I'll link it. I think it's Yap. It's not a very good way to do it, but basically it's a little widget that it actually sits in your Google Sheet. And if you're logged into your email through that, then you can basically have a list of people in that Google Sheet, and it will send, and it will come right from the Gmail. I think it's called Yap. Let me find it, but that's the way.
Have you automated the user growth? Are the things that you add to it automated, or do you just look it up quick?
No, not fully. Yeah, it sits in my Stripe. It's in a little MongoDB or whatever table at the end of the day, and I just plug it in. It's not as cool as you think maybe then, but it's...
Anyways, the thing I wanted to pump your tires about it was that's a great community thing. That's exactly what Build in Public is. I love it. It's what's made us stay. I feel like I've stayed in touch with you over the last year. And that is, for anyone listening, like, marketing can be demystified. Just think about who you want to stay in touch with on a regular basis, and just send them something that is meaningful but useful for everybody. That's literally all that it is. Anyways, your question about what was the segue about SEO and websites?
Yeah.
I want to go even higher with this because I think it unpacks the whole thing. I'm really concerned. Let's talk about the viability of my business model around and how I'm thinking about the strategy for it. It's all about staying in touch with people. Like literally, I create content to stay in touch with people. The way I pitch it is that you have a sales touch point. Instead of emailing or calling a prospect, just add them to a pile of people that you want to keep in touch with monthly. Send them a newsletter, or as they're walking down the digital hallway of LinkedIn, they will run into you. And that's an impression. Yeah. That business only succeeds if the content you're creating is interesting enough for people to engage, impression upon it. And so SEO, I think, is even more challenging here because it's about engaging with strangers typically rather than people you know. Do you think that AI, from your vantage point, is going to learn how to capture our attention so well that it's going to be very hard for us to talk person to person?
I think we've seen a bit of that process already. I think of like the TikTok or YouTubeization, where it's like jump cuts, and anything that has a little bit of lag or like dwindling moment of excitement can get lost. Or just, I see this with videos because I just rant here for myself sometimes, and I'm like, this is not good. And I'll just see the drop off in the video because it wasn't quick. So I think we're already tailoring ourselves for that. And I think a lot of content these days is already gone through some sort of large language model filter where it's like, hey, here's my first draft. Rewrite this to be more punchy, rewrite this to be more compelling, more click worthy. So I think we're already on that path. And then I personally think two sides of it. It's very obvious when people have fully constructed something with a large language, maybe not very obvious, but maybe overuse of emojis, structure, the kind of words that it is, even how it ends it. And so I think a lot of people are now sifting through content, trying to figure out, is this authentically from someone, or is this just some GPT created piece? I will say then there is this other thing that I've seen, which has become like, I remember when I was learning about marketing, like the ADA model of writing, like, and attention being at the start. So one of the examples I have is this guy who was, I think, maybe the CRO, like the chief revenue officer at Gong. And so now he posts a lot of content and thought leadership. And his first sentence on every single post is, I took Gong from 200 ARR to 100 million ARR. And then that's like the hook to then get you, okay, this is credibility. And then now I'm going to read the rest of it because it was such an establishing thing. So I feel like there's almost a bit of over optimization or indexing on the hook to get someone in, and we're putting a lot of focus there, and then maybe the rest of the content doesn't deliver. But to answer your question, yes, I do believe that. I think we're moving towards that direction. And one other part that I will say is around the SEO component of this, which to me, there's a lot of contradicting information out there right now, which is, for example, that can a large language model generated content, can it be detected by engines? That's, I think, one of the major concerns that any person in marketing is having right now. I'm sure you're thinking about that too. Right now, it seems relatively inaccurate. And the other part, is it capable of producing high enough content, high quality content, that one, that it ranks, and two, that if it does rank and people actually go to it, do they feel that it's good content or not? I'm hesitant to describe it, but I found a workflow that allowed us to produce highly personalized content pages at scale using large language models on Speak. Don't listen to this, Google, don't penalize me for that. But that took us from about 2,000 people on our site each month to about 60,000 in a very short time. And we've seen the baseline reset because some of that content was not good quality, but still, if the baseline is now 45,000, that's a whatever X time on that in a quality of content that is not that much different than me hiring a bunch of people from the Philippines or Pakistan or areas where people are doing content farms anyways. I don't know. I just said a lot of things. I'm not sure if you want to reflect back or anywhere you want to go with that.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot, we're in flux. If it's one thing the
Yes, for
market
sure.
doesn't like,
Yeah,
if it's one thing the market doesn't like, it's uncertainty, right?
Yep.
We can deal with bears, we can with bulls, but the fact that SEO, so I like there is so much conflicting evidence. Like Google's goose is cooked. At the same time, there was a update to their I forget, this is how basic, and this is part of me bootstrapping my agency, is that I've avoided some of the technical SEO stuff because I can't purport to have a seasoned, experienced bench strength in that. But so I am learning this, which I think is useful for listeners here. But the new algorithm that Google just released, they've added, I forgot what the EAT stands for SEO, but they've added an EEAT, and the new E is experience. So they're going to rank for firsthand experience from posts, from actual content. So being like, here's what worked for me, here's what happened in my experience when I did it, like that sort of thing will, I don't know how that's not a cat and mouse if AI responds to that or something, but maybe there's limiters that it can't be an imposter like that. But I think that there's a much bigger question around attention and just the speed at which I've seen ChatGPT to DALL-E to AI movies. And the whole premise of a lot of this marketing content is around more than what you're selling actually being interesting and being exciting to the buyer. And if our attention's that shot, it's going to be hard to compete against algorithms that are purposefully built to your individual attention span.
Completely with you on that. So I'm watching on Netflix right now. It's an animated thing. Morgan Freeman is narrating it. It's a bunch of dinosaurs and all this stuff. Love it. Love Morgan Freeman's voice. But we're moving into an era. Descript is one product that does it. 11 Labs, another, of voice cloning. And I think that combined with generative video or whatever experience you want, not only are creators competing with more popular people celebrities and influencers and people who are experts in their field. I think we're now going to have to start to compete with, like you said, this personalized experience. So why would I listen to even you and me talking right now if I could just make Kanye West sing the national anthem at a game on the moon? I just feel like there's so many entertaining realities that we're going to be capable of creating that why would I even choose to exist or consume real human ones unless there's a huge credibility or celebrity of it. Yes, I think in most cases, a lot of people are going to continue want to hear what Elon Musk has to say in real time, like he just did a podcast on with Rogan, and people would love to hear an update from him. But most people don't, I think, have that affinity. We don't have that affinity for that many people. So I agree. There's the idea of attention being shot, but then there's also new worlds of creative playgrounds that are opening up and too much, almost infinite choice. And with infinite choice, the real people might not be the first selection, or it's just going to be a subsection. Maybe it's just a percentage of your day. If I'm consuming content, maybe it's 50% real content and 50% complete simulation. I'd love to hear Terrence McKenna talk to Steve Jobs. I don't care if it's not real, but the idea that these models have replicated that and made it pretty entertaining is entertaining enough for me to want to consume that content.
I think that it makes the stakes different. It changes the like terrain within which marketing and even just communications and media operates like on a new level. And I think back to growing up when CGI, when like computer
Yep.
graphics came out, like Toy Story, there were some movies that made a lot of money because CGI and the new frontier of computer graphics existed, where the plot, it didn't age well. Same as with music, like new mixing and using computer to mix and edit songs made some songs part of the moment, but didn't make it have lasting staying power. Yeah. And the same thing's going to happen right now. So maybe SEO is going to lose out on the attention arbitrage world of marketing. But I'm actually hopeful after playing this out a couple times in my mind. I think what I do is going to be even more valuable, but possibly harder to sell in the moment because people think they can do it just sitting with ChatGPT and do it. But thought leadership, content, sharing what you do will just force me and my clients and people who do this to focus even further on their unique value proposition.
For sure. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
which is a tough process too, even. It's hard to figure out unique value propositions when whether it's individually as a person or as a company. It's, oh my God, there's so much noise and competition everywhere you go. I'm finding it hard to figure that part out. And I'm sure you have to chunk away at a person through conversation for them to reveal that value proposition, unless it's clear. One clear one would stick out to me as like a PhD, because you've literally done research on a topic that no one else has ever done. Maybe there's subsegments of that topic, but you literally chose a net new topic to dive, and then you're the expert on that.
It's even, the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. And you and I we're at pretty cutting edge end of things, I would say, not to toot our own horn or whatever, because there's people who are far more advanced than we are. But there is still so much opportunity in nearly every single sector to just do a good job of marketing. Yep. Sometimes the unique value proposition can literally be like, I live in this city and I know everything about this city, and you can relate to me because I care about it just like you. And I'm just going to tell people I care about it like you. I use this analogy around COVID when we were locked up, around people competing for services and how they market. And so I use the example of a guitar teacher. And I think it talks about this internet age that we're in right now a little bit more. So a guitar teacher, if you were looking up to give your kid guitar lessons, you would look up, way back in the day, you'd look up in like Yellow Pages on Google for whoever's closest. You look at the top 4 people within a half-hour drive or something like that, and it'd just be guitar teacher based off a review. But in the internet era, and accelerate that with AI, if you want to learn how to play Jack Johnson or Jimi Hendrix and you want to learn how to do it on acoustic, and you're at this level, you can probably find someone who is ranking for that online.
Yeah.
And then you're competing as a niche of one or a community of one for that type of thing. And I think that AI will push us to challenge us to fight over that a little bit more. But we have to remind ourselves that there's still so much opportunity
Oh, for
for
sure.
being better. Yeah.
And even this idea, like when you're whatever, you're a founder, you're growing your company, the idea is always the riches is in the niches. I still don't know how to pronounce that word, but that never really resonated with me until I would say this moment, because at Speak AI, we had been building a relatively horizontal technology company. This idea of almost like a Zapier for natural language tasks. And you talked about thinking that I was at the cutting edge. We had built all these extraction techniques, sentiment, and all entities and all this. And then all of a sudden, transformers came out, and just the paradigm that we had worked on for 3 years was destroyed overnight. And there's still a lot, I'm exaggerating, there's still a lot of valuable use cases for that paradigm. And we almost have two coexisting and complementary ways that people are using our product and doing analysis. But then there's explosions that you can't predict, like this technology explosion of large language models that you can also capitalize on. So one of the only, not only good experiences, but one of the things that I found with YouTube and creating on YouTube and in general is two things: focus on long tail searches. So not just a very simple search, because those searches are so competitive, but also if you can, you talked about that. If you can get in early on a concept or even a story, you can just naturally ride an algorithm because they don't know who is the authoritative source yet. As an example, I did a video on what is prompt engineering, and I did that very early in that where no one was really talking about it yet. For some reason, I was plugged into some communities. I started to see this term come up, and I just asked the question, what is prompt engineering? And that's probably the most popular video I did today. It's still only at 50,000 views, but it was solely because I got in early on that topic. And as people started searching, Google or search engines said, what was the earliest types of content on this? Because we can't measure everything else, we're going to determine that's the most authoritative because it was the first. I think there's a lot of opportunity in also long tail searches. Or are you using SEMrush or Ahrefs or Ahrefs or any of those tools as well too to validate your sort of SEO work?
I'd like to do more of it for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, we definitely use some of it, and you're completely nailing it around long tail, also answering questions, anything related to those like SERPs as well.
Also, the idea of zero-click searches, which is something interesting. You can plug in a concept and that there's a natural growth in that search around the world, but those systems aren't detecting it yet. And so you can actually you can outmaneuver, outcompete larger incumbents or bigger companies, because still a lot of marketing teams are looking for high volume, relatively low competition, things that they can rank on. And if they see a word has no searches, they're just not going to prioritize it. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities where I'm like, no one's searching for this yet. But if you build that content now and get it out, as those searches come online, you will start to do it. So I'll share an example for Speak. I was like, okay, ChatGPT, obviously people are going to be searching for this. What if I do landing pages, every single one of them, ChatGPT for Zoom videos, ChatGPT for Microsoft Teams, ChatGPT for research papers, and literally stacked 500 landing pages with that search, with those different queries. At the time, no one was searching for those, but now those have been some of our highest traffic pages because it was early on before those searches even do it. And I don't think every business has the luxury to be able to relatively publish content on a novel new concept like that. But if you can find yourself in that place, there's a huge opportunity available.
Really good. That's also to come at it from a different angle. That's not totally focused on SEO. It's about being a lighthouse, right? If you see something, you see the future happening ahead of you,
Yeah.
and you see an industry that is going to have to figure this out and they don't see it yet, start talking about it immediately.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched back on that what is prompt engineering video, and it's bullcrap because there's no information about it. I'm just like philosophizing about what it could be, but still it had that impact. And I still get people will find that video, and then on LinkedIn they'll send me a message to ask if I can do a talk on it. And that simple of a thing. I think one of the other pieces that you talked about earlier in this video is just like, how can you put yourself in a natural environment to create content, decent content repeatably at scale, not scale, I shouldn't add that word. I just add that word because I'm an idiot. But like for me, I consistently is a better word, because I think that's the other piece. I think people get very disillusioned when they start to publish content and they don't see the traction or the numbers reflect what they hope their reality is. And the truth is, relatively, you probably don't have a big as following as you think. People don't care as much as you think. And so you're going to put some content out and it's going to not perform. But you got 6 people watch this video, and that sucks and is very discouraging. But if you can get over that hoop and just continue to publish content consistently, at some point, those small touch points seem to add up, that multi-touch point sort of content production. But that's a nightmare to fight through egotistically, I think, sometimes. I'm sure sometimes that's the relationships you have to deal with the work that you're doing.
Oh yeah. Some of the biggest things with, I call it the first draft pass, like the first draft approval process. It's something I go through with every single client, is just, here, we're ghost writing this for you. Quite often they have no other content to go off of. And part of our value prop is we're going to develop the voice with you by putting stuff out there. It's in the minds of your customer. But with that first draft, quite often all they've done is talk to us. We've recorded a conversation just like this. And so they're seeing on paper our interpretation as close to possible of what they have said. And so for them, the reactions are all the colors of the rainbow, like literally. And getting to the second revision, third revision, fourth revision, it's a lot of fear of having it be perfect or not quite what they want, or not confident about putting it out there. And Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn guy, he said there are no bull ads. It's like one of the important things as a marketing leader or business owner is like, it's related to the build it and they will come. There is no bull ad where you do this one marketing thing, you do this one sales thing, you launch this one product, and everything will come to you. As it's 1,000 paper cuts to get to where you need to be.
I've dealt with that firsthand in a couple of different ways. Some that's interesting is like the idea of the killer product feature or killer release that you think this is it. And so I've seen 2 sides of this. One where we launched this little system called the invaluable recorder. I actually think we had a chat about that where it could capture voice. And I was convinced that was a valuable addition to our platform. We worked hard to do that. And when I say we worked hard, I did a little bit of marketing, but we had a dev team build that out, including our co-founder. And we launched that, and it was just absolute crickets. It was one of those releases where it's like, oh my God, we just spent whatever X amount of hours and dollars going into this. And then, so we put that up, but then we put the landing page. No one was searching for this. 6 months later, it became a leading business driver for us. Really? But it took 6 months for that to happen, for the page to rank, for even people to start searching for this type of product. And at a moment, there was tension even on our team and then we've seen the opposite, which has been, we've talked to a bunch of people. They say, oh, if you put this functionality within the system, 100% we're going to subscribe. 100% this is going to convert us. You do that release and it just does not happen. You do not see the conversion that you think or thought. And so I think I've been punched in the face too many times around like the big moment or the big release that you just can't even have that optimism, and you just have to go, okay, this is V1, iterate, get feedback as much as possible. Now, I want to ask you, I know I've taken up a bit of your time here, but I'm enjoying this. I hope you are too. The idea of tools in this current process that you're doing. So one of the things is you're interviewing. So I'm interested, I'm guessing you're using maybe some sort of tool like Otter, Fireflies, transcribe that call, and then you're able to take that into some sort of written format. Maybe you're, again, writing that yourself. Maybe you're using some sort of GPT or a large language model enabled process to at least help. What are your assessment, or what are your thoughts around? I'm thinking of 3 tools in general. There's a company called Writer, there's Jasper, and then there's Grammarly. And I think what happened to them was they were very early to get involved with large language models. And so they rode this wave. Jasper especially was one of the biggest beneficiaries of good product market fit and messaging and a distribution channel as some of these technologies came online and people first saw it. But then one of the biggest value propositions that I've seen all them, intimately work on has been, if you want to write content, you need to write it in the voice, in your company's voice or your personal voice. And so I'm just interested about your process, because you're actually interviewing and having in-depth conversations with people. And then you're trying to interpret and elaborate and figure out can we take that and turn it in their voice. But now it does seem there are technology-enabled systems which are literally using like massive models to try to understand what someone's voice is and then replicate it. Now I'm going to really use the word at scale. So how are you thinking about that? I'm just interested in your thought process. Are you using those tools? Are you thinking about that? And then is there any conflict between your process of understanding someone's voice versus maybe a more mechanical or technology enabled process of that?
There's so much to reply to what you just said.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Still working on my questioning.
No,
I can't throw nine questions at once.
No, this is exactly how I interview clients, and that I'm just like a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Thoughts? Yeah. Softball thoughts. Yeah. The reason why I think what we do is protected or sheltered a little bit is because we're trying to come up with new ideas. And so when the folks that we work with can't really provide ChatGPT with the content for them to extract any new ideas to the conversation. It does like a fake to you, because you can combine things that have existed and it'll create something new.
Yeah.
But it's not like a net new idea usually. We just worked with a client on like a hydrogen power startup that they invested into. So we had to ask them about the feasibility and economics behind hydrogen power. Why now? There isn't really stuff that ChatGPT can like extrapolate from that. Yeah. And we do use some of the things that were really easy to make money from as a content agency is now simple. So things like event descriptions or post-event recaps, things like that. But now we've just had to layer in, tell us how the event went from your perspective, from the founder, in order to get anyone to actually engage with it. We used a script. Like the best thing that we've done is just automated transcriptions. We used to pay a transcriptionist human to do the stuff.
Sucks. Yeah.
Even that is sometimes better. If I'm interviewing someone about blockchain, about DeFi,
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Automated transcription can't do anything with that usually. Depends what the use case is for. But we record. We don't even use Fireflies or Otter. We record in Zoom just like this, put it into Descript. We use annotated links to source out whoever the subject matter facilitator is. So quite often that's me. I'm doing this because this is really fun for me. Like, here's 20 ideas for posts, share it with the content writer, and then they go away with it.
Yeah.
We are getting to a point though where we're finding needles in the haystack of content using ChatGPT and large language models. So by that, what I mean is our value prop has been, let's not figure out what the messaging is before we start publishing everything your customer needs to know. Let's start publishing stuff. We've built enough of a content backlog for these people that we can now put the content backlog through the computer and then source out what are the key messages amongst all of these things, and what is missing, what are adjacent ideas that we should talk about. And those tend to become questions that we use in the next interviews. There's definitely more that I could be doing. And
that's true with anyone.
There's certainly more AI. Yeah, but just to stay ahead, I know that there wouldn't be too much in order to be scalable. My biggest problem with my business getting entrepreneurship is like automation and process repetition.
Yeah, and I think so. In the original, did you ever use like a spin rewriter? Do you ever remember those tools? You'd write like an article. So this was like the first version of repurposing content, or like basically you would do the skyscraper technique, right? You'd find the top 10 results on Google, you'd paste those, and then the spin rewriter tool was this very logic-based thing where it would find a phrase or a word and it would just replace it with another variation. So almost like a dumb plagiarizer that would try to produce original content. And 8 years ago or whatever, that was the way that people would try to like tackle this technique. And then there was all these repurposing workflows. But I think the experience that most people had with repurposed content was it was just so stiff. It was never cohesive with the platform that it landed on. Take a podcast, like Headliner does this, a bunch of other, take a podcast and then repurpose it into a video clip, and Descript is now doing that. I think there's a lot of tools. I think it's actually getting much better. And then what I'm jealously following are people who are building fully automated YouTube channels through generative AI workflows that are netting millions of dollars. Now, and that's edge case. Some of them are not netting that much money, but just the fact that people have figured out a workflow to create content in a system like that is pretty intense. I think when you say, hey, there's more that I can do, I'm trying to figure out a little bit of that now. And again, not with the goal of just creating as much content as possible, but it needs to be at least serviceably good enough content.
I had a lead gen. Yeah. Two really interesting use cases. I've seen someone take I saw a workflow for creating infographics. So essentially social media posts, very similar to YouTube, by using encyclopedia data. So it's which countries have the most historical landmarks and what sort of similarities in data can you create from lists around historical landmarks. You do this with anything. You could be like, what are the coolest sharks based on size, lethalness, whatever, and it just produced. But one use case I've seen is a lead gen agency. They created a spreadsheet workflow with ChatGPT that had LinkedIn profiles and highly customized outreach messages based on looking at the LinkedIn profiles.
Yes.
And so this is like is it clever or duplicitous?
I'm going to say both, but I think we're all, not all, but there's a percentage of us who are now highly aware. I don't even know how much I think of my LinkedIn messages to me are legit anymore. Now I know if it's you messaging me and we're talking about this podcast, it's a little different, but most things I read, hey, and there's the really bad ones, which, hey, I'd love to add you to my personal network. And this is just but then it's the faux personalized version. But I think there's very clever people who are getting this through. They're getting what seems to be a legitimate message. And I don't know if it classifies into, like you said, duplicit. I can't even say that word. But but to me, depending on your side, to me, if I could figure that out, that's actually effective. And I would love to be able to do it. So I think as much as we all value human to human connection, the idea of scaling our communication and whittling out unnecessary conversations to get to an end state, most people would like that. Most people, especially if you're in sales, you're a CEO or a founder, you have a connection or a call and you realize, this is not worth the time, or this is not going anywhere. And yet you're still doing the call. And if you could remove that even 50% through this kind of outreach, then that's a pretty good return on investment, because it frees you up for this time. And I'll just add an interesting note that I've seen. So it's a little outside it, but there's a friend of mine, they have a company called VoiceForm. And you basically submit through, it's similar to the recorder function that we have. But what's really interesting is when you submit that recording, it will very quickly assess that submission that you did. And then it will follow up with another question using the large language model. So it becomes almost like an interview, which used to be just like a one-time input. And I've actually seen a couple of people reaching out to me through LinkedIn where it doesn't actually just seem an automated schedule of messaging. Based on the input or this response that I gave back, the follow-up message seems to be GPT generated, and it took my response into consideration, or it's a very impressive program, but I don't actually think that's true. I think there's now already systems that are connected into LinkedIn that are doing GPT back and forth querying for people and having full conversations.
Stay. And how many times have conspiracy theorists been right lately? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, this one's, I've had, and maybe I'm wrong about it, but I just think it's there's too many incentives to figure this out versus
too obvious. Yeah. It's almost too obvious.
And the other one platform that it's a huge platform, Canva, but they've also put this bulk create function into Canva. Interesting. I made a couple just like little YouTube videos off it, but basically I would ingest an article, use the large language model, create a table format. And then all I need to do is copy and paste that table format into Canva, and it will dynamically insert the content. And it created a little 60-second short video. And I use that for a couple, hey, here's some big technology announcements that happened this week, published that video. It's okay video, but still a couple hundred views just because it got in early. And it was almost fully automated and scalable. So I think these systems that, pass all these things together are only going to get better. And I'm fairly technical. I think, you called yourself geriatric. I don't actually believe that. I think you're pretty technical at hooking workflows together too. I think it's just going to get more and more simple, or platforms will be no code platforms to solve these exact problems that we're talking about. I mean, I have too much that I could ask you about, but I'll be considerate of time. Is there anything else that you want to chat about as we try to conclude this conversation?
I just heard maybe some construction next door, so this is actually perfect timing.
Okay.
One thing I think is really important, whether it's content, I think also we're both startup buffs too, entrepreneurship buffs, and then AI in general. I was on a call yesterday with a bunch of very senior business people who are all on boards. They're boards of directors. One of my clients is, he's like a senior guy who's on the board of like BMO Bank and teaches at Rotman corporate governance, how to function as a board director.
Boring. Important, but sucks. Yeah. I'm just
important, but and I think it's whatever. It doesn't matter.
I'm just joking.
Yeah. But related to that, my buddy who I was sending some DALL-E pictures to yesterday, because we were just joking around, he messaged me before this call and was like, can we hop on a call and you could prompt, I want to create a couple things and see how it works. And the way that I'm tying this in with entrepreneurship, things I'm passionate with, is like, we have to do a better job of showing people this stuff. Like we literally, like the mental blockage for tons of people, whether it's publishing content, starting a business, playing with ChatGPT, or figuring out an automated workflow, usually comes down to watching someone do it beside you, ahead of you, with you. I think one of the biggest takeaways when it comes to AI, but also is something that we're both really passionate about, which is entrepreneurship. It's really summarized quite well with what Brad Feld said about the Boulder thesis. There's 4 principles, but one of it basically goes down to entrepreneurship is a local phenomenon. Anyone should be able to participate, and entrepreneurship leads to more entrepreneurship as a principle.
Interesting.
And that's why sectors, geographies, communities form and grow. One person that does one thing, so you might be you're in a sentiment analysis, natural language processing thing, you have probably inspired other people to get into this space and follow you. And so your success creates draft behind other people.
Interesting.
And so one thing I'm really passionate about is getting more people out there. And you're right, I might be I'm geriatric millennial because I do a bad job of using it. I'm an observer.
Yeah.
I'm not a user. My workflows are probably worse than you think. I think, yeah.
Interesting. I love Brad Feld. I didn't know about that thesis. Actually, I met him loosely at one point. That was pretty cool at a Techstars conference. But the part that one thing that stuck out to me, you talk about accessibility. And I have gone through a phenomenon that I've come to understand. I used to do a lot of analytics. I used to do paid advertising and SEO. And so when people pay you to advertise that stuff, then they want analytics reports. And I would always share these analytics reports with these clients or these customers, and it would just be completely like overwhelming. The meaning that I would see in that, no matter how many times I tried to refactor it, it just never seemed to resonate fully. There was just this data visualization or data overload. Now it's actually flipped, where people are giving these chat UI almost empty experiences. And so it's the opposite. And I'm finding people are actually having as many problems with an empty state as they were with an overstate of data. So we, put someone up against a video that maybe they're interested in learning more about. In some cases, they will have a question that they ask, but there's a lot of people who just don't even know how to start the process or what question to ask. And so you'll start to see these chat flows that are now, Claude does a great version, Anthropic's Claude. When you upload a document, it will give you a quick summary of that document, which can be a little bit of a starting off point. or a company Cohere is when it summarizes that document, it will actually give you a couple recommended questions that you could ask next. Because I think there is a net new core interaction with technology that is taking place right now. And I think we're still in the early adopter phase of it. Maybe we hit that I saw that curve, but I think still most people have maybe tested these things, but are not using it in day-to-day workflows and finding like actual valuable outcomes. So I think we have a long way to go. I think the way that you're thinking about it is probably the right way. And it's just about taking some time to actually test out and figure out, do these fit into the workflows? And I think in some cases it works well. And I think in some cases there is an expectation curve here that is not being met still. A lot of people testing these products and not seeing the value proposition that they hoped. But I think if you can maneuver it right with the right data, with the right querying or whatever, you can actually have those breakthrough moments where it's like, wow, this technology is actually delivering on this promise that we've been waiting for, I think, many, many decades. If people want to reach out to you, connect with you, they're interested in you, which I don't know why they wouldn't be. You did an awesome job sharing some insights on this. How can they find you? What's the best way to reach you?
Quinn at communityandcompany.com. Yeah, get a hold of me. Find me on LinkedIn. More than happy to chat more. Want more people to be sharing what they're doing, getting stuff out there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it for anyone who watched this, who tuned in, who listened to it. Quinn did a wonderful job. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks a lot, Tyler.